As you can see, South Africa came into this game with a 7-1 bench split. This was the same 7-1 split that snagged a record win margin over the All Blacks after a last-minute injury to Willie le Roux. An attempt to repeat this one-off tactic to me though is a huge sign of weakness. Before we get into today's video, I want to say a big huge thank you to my patrons. My name's Max, I'm the host over here at the Black Jersey, and as you would have gathered, today's video is going to be on South Africa versus Ireland in Pool B of the 2023 Rugby World Cup. It was one heck of a contest there. It was unbelievably good, so physical, but for those who may have noticed the lack of activity from me, it's because I've been busy putting a lot of my older analysis videos from this World Cup over onto Rumble. I'm only going to be using stills for today's video because of a few copyright issues, so all of my older videos from the World Cup are available over on there. If you can't afford to become a Patreon of mine, it's all good. Anyway, with the T's and C's for today's video over and done with, let's get into this. Just 13 seconds into the game, we get proof of that same lack of confidence from South Africa. Faf de Klerk gets caught in an awkward situation. With a one-man pod of Du Toit to the inside of a two-man pod of Mostert and Malherbe, de Klerk is under a huge amount of pressure. If these players all follow this animation to form a caterpillar ruck, de Klerk will be able to get a bit more protection for a box kick. Because they're in spotlights, however, O'Mahony, who is just centimetres from the offside line, and Van der Fleer can follow the black arrows for a charge down. A pass from Mostert to Wieser, whose head we can't see, therefore becomes the only option. As we fast forward to 16 seconds on the clock though, de Klerk instead fails to trust the work ethic of the pod to clean out a ruck around Wieser. De Klerk now follows this animation into his current spot before, under very little pressure, he throws a forward pass straight into a knock-on by Arendse. Although a deliberate knockdown by Ireland does allow South Africa to get the first 3 points of the game, they aren't out just yet though, they are here to play. All of the players we can see on this ruck to the left of frame on 12:09 all pop up again on 12:18 in a formation dictated by Sexton. As they're less fit than the others, Porter and Doris flank either side of Furlong, possibly in attempts to convert him into a hooker in a three-man pod. As we spotlight this lot, Hansen follows this animation to leave his tattoo parlour to join Sexton in a pod. Kelleher, having waited in the backfield, is now joined in a pod by Ringrose too, while Aki sits outside them as a crash ball runner. As they follow this axis and are all stacked behind one another, South Africa can't shut the door on the attack, shifting to the blind side to get in behind O'Mahony. We now skip ahead to 12:20 to see that Doris is advanced forward to take the pass himself. Because the pass has gone to Doris, the man in the H9-10 Leinster combo, Sexton and the other pods are able to spread out wider, while Hansen is given the time to travel into the space between Aki and Ringrose. We now skip forward to the ball leaving Sexton's hands. A hands down the line blue axis is now revealed to us, while a decoy line by Kelleher, this forces Arendse to mark two players at once, as per the white arrows. As the third arrow shows us, Willemse now has to cover all of this space to mark Aki. Thinking is read it, we now see Arendse again on the second later, all in on Hansen. Because Hansen isn't looking to take this ball, the hole here now opens for Ringrose, which now allows him to bust the line and work with Aki, Keenan and Lowe, who we can all see on the outside. Ireland don't manage to score thanks to a knock-on made by Kelleher later on, but man, this is absolutely huge for the mental battle between these sides. After plenty of expansive rugby for the crowd though, Ireland still haven't scored by the 33rd minute. As we can see in this freeze frame, there are 8 Springboks in the tinted circle with 7 Irish players in the spotlit circle. Although Aki has the overlap, it's just not a realistic position for him to get the ball from, especially with Sexton at the bottom of a ruck. The other side, however, presents far more opportunity. Although O'Mahony is marked by 2 players, should he crash it up on the red cross, Porter is in enough of a position to get from one ruck to the other really quickly. Well, now as we see O'Mahony in this position, Willemse is stuck in a 2-on-1 against Hansen, who is out of frame, as well as Lowe. The 2 arrows give him no choice but to zone in on Lowe, who was the closest. This allows for Hansen to score. And as I know the usual suspects will try to say the ref robbed South Africa, here's the still of the ball being cleanly grounded before we get to the ad break. Now guys, now that the ad break's done, we're going to present the half-time stats. As we can see, Ireland had the majority share of possession and territory, and I want to say as well, even when South Africa, when they did have the possession, you could always feel an Irish presence because they had very, very good line speed when they were on the front foot. As we can see though, the Springboks, thanks thanks to the Irish cover defence, they were able to beat more defenders 101, and they were really able to get a few more opportunities because the cover defence, it wasn't packed in together too tightly. I'm going to have a segment on the cover defence later in the video, but thanks to that wee stat over there, they were definitely able to do a bit of damage to the Irish and really get a disproportionate share of, you know, getting those opportunities. The turnovers though, dude, Ireland were magnificent in the breakdown, getting 5 turnovers compared to the Springboks 2. That was huge. Their tackle success though, definitely a symptom of their cover defence strategy. Ireland's during the Six Nations, as I said in a previous video, they had the same tackle percentage in that competition as Italy, and now we see them over here at 74%. That's not only because they've had to make fewer tackles, but because of this strategy, it definitely distorts this data against them. The goal kick success, perfect for both sides, really awesome, but we can see at the ruck, the Springboks, they definitely had a bit of trouble with their ball handling. 3 of the rucks that were lost in the first half, I'm suspecting that all of those are from the knock-ons at the breakdown. A lot of the pressure Ireland applied did create a few nerves when underneath the ball, and a few Springboks, including Sia Khaleesi, were losing it forward a fair bit. The set piece though, perfect for South Africa. Ireland really botched a lot of opportunities. Ronan Kelleher in the line-out didn't have a very good game in the first half, and I was just thinking, you know, throughout that whole first half, my goodness, when is Dan Sheehan going to turn up? The ruck though, in the scrum, pretty much perfect. 100% scrum for both teams in this match at the end of the first half, and so with Ireland able to withstand that pressure from the Springboks in the first half, they weren't going to be going into that second half afraid of getting dominated at the set piece. And so with all that information under our belts, let's see how it got applied into the second half. To open the scoring of the second half, South Africa dotted down in the 51st minute. The big reason they can exploit some space is the positioning we see of Bundy Aki right now as the clock hits 50. Aki has joined low on the blind side of the pitch, as they've clearly done their research on South Africa, detaching from their set piece like how they did against the 14-man All Black side. Now that we get to a still on 50.07, we can see Arends are having a yarn to Malherbe about their try-scoring record comparisons, while Keenan is stuck in a very tough defensive position. Keenan needs to choose between either of these white arrows due to Hansen being taken out off the ball by Jesse Creel, who should not have been playing in this game. With Hansen unavailable to adjust his line and tackle a Bok, it's all over. Keenan goes all in on him, now leaving Cheslin Kolbe, currently out of frame, very happy. Kolbe is gonna Kolbe, and he scores the try for South Africa. Now guys, as we see on 46-46, Ireland used a flat defence structure on the front foot, allowing them to get the basics right and mark their man. The cover defence shape that we can see in use against Italy during the Summer Nations series, however, was given a bit of a twist for this particular game, as we discussed during the half-time stats part of the video. As we can see, South Africa made a clear effort to have support runners binds to the ball carrier in recent tests of their own, while in this still we can also clearly see a binds to Du Toit as he scores against Scotland earlier in the pool stage. Because of the defenders' beaten stats we saw in that first half that I'll put up on the screen again, Ireland realised that their usual cover defence stance wasn't working. We now cut to a still of 60-25 with Dan Sheehan far further in front of the other defenders in the Irish line. Because Sheehan stands here, he's cut off the blue axis from being used. He's able to rush up it in chair and cut off the pass out wide to Du Toit. Unlike the South African press defence structure we see on screen that leaves a lot of space out wide, Aki is still in enough of a realistic position to tackle either Bongi Mbonambi or Pieter-Steph Du Toit as we see through the black arrows. Although we can't see him, Mack Hansen is also out of frame to deal with Kolbe. As for the tight space up front, we'll cut to an animation of Sheehan and Aki being the linchpins of this system. The system we see animated, it's designed to have a single player advance further forward than the rest to deliberately miss a tackle on a back. The attacking team, who I'm going to show to you guys on white, will lose some pace due to the use of a midfielder as a speed bump, which now allows for the hooker to finish the tackle off before another forward comes in as a jackal threat. For when the attacking team give the ball to a forward, however, the hooker will slot into the centre's defensive spot. The hooker will be able to make a robust hit on the opposite to cut off the chances of them passing out the back. Because Aki has a low centre of gravity, he can now copy the animation of the midfielder to help the defending team as a ruck clearance option. Now that we move away from the animations and compare the two Irish defence shapes, one from the Italy game and another from the South Africa game here, we can see the difference in the defensive shape being highly effective at preventing South Africa from playing more expansive rugby. The defence we've just looked at, it forces a knock-on by Damien Dialendi. South Africa therefore have to resort to the boot and they miss again, then adding insult to injury, South Africa get penalised at 4 set pieces during the last 10 minutes. We now reach the final moment of the match. As we can see here on 79.55, Iain Henderson has begun to strip the ball as you are legally allowed to do during a maul. Because Enyakane and Snyman peels towards the side, they've given Henderson time to get in the middle to win the turnover. Henderson is however removed from the maul. As we can see on 80.04, he's gone to ground. Because the maul is still ongoing and Henderson doesn't have the ball, the referee now needs to find out where the ball is. The referee goes around to check and on 80.12 the maul has collapsed. He now, as we zoom in, finds the ball in the hands of Kolbe Reinach, because Reinach is in possession of the ball over here following the turnover by Henderson 19 seconds earlier. This means South Africa have not released the ball during the turnover and that Ireland are awarded the penalty. That now means it's full time and they will get into the full time stats after another ad break. South Africa viciously fought back during the second half and they actually finished off the test match with 51% possession. Ireland choosing at the end of the game to kind of just, you know what, let's allow our defence to see out the match, which of course worked really well. South Africa, they ran far more metres thanks to having a higher share of possession, and of course they were getting a lot more clean breaks and they remained ahead in terms of defenders beaten for the game, but that percentage, it was really coming down in the second half due to the Irish cover defence inverting its shape as we discussed earlier on. South Africa trying to offload it more, but it just wasn't working. Ireland knew exactly how to beat them, pile bodies into the breakdown, and they finished this game off with 9 turnovers compared to the South African 3. South Africa, they were knocking the ball on, they were trying to make turnovers from offside. Much like the energy supply, South Africa under Jacques Nienaber have been very inconsistent. Ireland's tackle percentage also definitely improved during the rest of the match, got up to 81%. South Africa, of course, they take the defence seriously. They were always going to make a lot of tackles and a high percentage, but the goal kick success. I've said it before, Manie Libbok, if he got those goals, there's a likelihood that South Africa would have won. There's also that same likelihood when we move over to the line-out stats that Ireland could have won by more if Ronan Keller hadn't thrown so badly in the line-out in the middle of that first half. The ruck success, though, there was a big thing as well yet again. Ireland won that one. The scrum and the line-out man, though, for South Africa, at the end of the game, it was those last 10 minutes that really counted. They lost 2 of their own scrums, they lost 2 of their own lineouts, and of course Ireland's definitely tried a lot harder in the scrum to win those penalties. Though they did of course lose 2 of their own scrums, they were able to get the penalties off some of their own scrums as well in the end of that second half. It's not always the appearance of these stats we're looking at right now that does the job. It's the context of them, and it's which scrums, which lineouts are getting lost. Because Ireland were losing lineouts earlier in the game, they had the opportunity to recover, and of course they recovered. Discipline as well, we can really see Ireland took advantage of that. South Africa conceded 4 penalties inside their own half. Ireland took half of those. Good on them, allowed them to win by the decent margin that they deserved. Because South Africa gave away 7 penalties inside their opposition half as well. That got Ireland out of jail many a time, including of course at the end of the match when they didn't release during Henderson's turnover. As I said to several people in my DMs before this game, South Africa are going to lose by 4 and they will blame the ref. South Africa did not lose by 4, they lost by 5, but at the end of the day, if you're blaming the ref for this game, you can't blame the ref. You've got to look at the set piece, you've got to look at the discipline, and you've got to admit that Ireland managed to beat South Africa at their own game after doing it previously in 2022. Psychologically, that win from 2022 was huge for the Irish and allowed for them to have the dress rehearsal for what they achieved today in an absolutely amazing game. Don't blame the ref in the comments. Say congratulations to Ireland because they absolutely deserve to win. And considering these guys are probably going to play the All Blacks in the quarterfinal, I'm now pretty terrified, so I'm going to go off and have a cry and then edit this video. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys. I really appreciate it. Do support me over on Rumble. Do support me over on Instagram, over on Threads, and over on Odyssey as well, where I've got my analysis videos that were taken down due to my fears of copyright and everything. Thank you so much for watching the video. I will see you on the next one. Cheers from Max.